In this video, I want to show you how you can use the Edit Playstyle and Grid Editor to quickly manipulate your MIDI groove performance using the Orchestral Percussion expansion library. We're also going to use the song track as well to create a customized orchestral groove. So rather than diving into the Edit Playstyle and Grid Editor right away, let's first grab a groove that we want to work with. We're going to use this bass drum and snare groove. But I don't want to grab the whole thing. Instead, I'm just going to grab the snare drum, and I can do that by using the groove parts over on the right hand side. I'm going to drag that into the song track. Let's go ahead and loop the whole thing. I'm going to jump to this piatti cymbals. It's a different tempo, but it'll just adjust to the tempo we have here. And I like this groove 3. But I already have a snare drum part. All I want is the bass drum and crashes, and I want the bass drum hits and the crashes to play together. So we'll grab the bass drum, drag it down onto our existing groove. It's not going to replace anything. It's going to just get added. Same with our crashes. I want to add one more thing here. Let's add a simple taiko groove. We're just going to grab this first one from the Taiko's 90, and it just has a recurring rhythm. So we'll go ahead and grab that and bring that in here as well. So that in itself is a way to very quickly start layering and creating custom orchestral grooves by grabbing components of all of the MIDI that comes with the Orchestral Percussion expansion library and bringing them into a single MIDI loop. I'm going to double click this, and right now we're in the Edit Play style. And what we could do is change any one of these drums. The highlighted drums are what is available in this currently selected MIDI groove. I could adjust any one of these to lower velocity, raise velocity. Maybe I don't want as a lot of taikos or cymbals, for example, or bass drum since the snare drum starts quiet. Shift click to select multiple instruments. I'm going to bring the velocity down. Let's take a listen. And what I could actually do is start very quiet with the velocities and then follow that snare dynamic range up and down. And while we're here, if we wanted to, I could add more or less notes for any instrument. And again, Superior Drummer 3 is looking at the MIDI, the rhythms being played, adding notes or taking away notes in a musical fashion for that MIDI being played. So what I did there was turn down the amount. So we had less bass drum notes. Some of those cymbals were playing by themselves. I could do the opposite. We could turn it up. So we have more bass drum notes. Select all the instruments so we can adjust the velocity together. And that actually works very nice. There's a really nice rhythmic pattern happening in the bass drum that wasn't there before. Worked very well with this orchestral style. So I've reset this custom groove that we've created back to the original velocities from the layers we pulled in from the orchestral percussion MIDI. You can see the snare drum starts soft while everything else starts quite loud. Another way we can manage this instead of the edit play style is to go into the grid editor. So I'll double click and I can click on grid editor here. Or I can also select the MIDI groove and hit the P key on the keyboard. So we'll zoom out just a bit and you can see the velocity range change of the snare drum as compared to everything else. That's a much louder velocity. So we go back to the snare drum. What I'm going to do is actually split this groove. Option Command on the Mac, click, and now I have two different pieces of the same groove. I'm going to leave the first half the same because I like that first loud hit of the snare drum and then it comes down in velocity and then slowly increases. At the end though, I want to get really, really soft. So basically I want to leave these higher velocities the same and ramp down everything else. A quick way to do that is to use these fade functions on either side of the grid editor. So with the snare selected, you can see I can ramp that down and it's really just affecting the lowest velocities. So we'll bring that down a bit more so we get really nice dynamic range. And now let's go to the bass drum. We're going to do the same thing on the second half. So we're basically mirroring what we're doing with the snare drum. Now we'll do it on both sides. Now remember, we have a really nice big hit with the snare drum at the beginning, so I'm going to do that by selecting that first bass drum hit, and we'll increase it as well. For the taikos, we'll do the same thing. I'm going to shift click to select all of the taikos. This is in the first half. We'll bring down the velocity range, do a drag select to bring up those first notes. We'll go ahead and jump to the second half. Notice that when I selected those first notes at the beginning, it was just the medium and large, so we need to make sure we select the small taiko again. Command click to bring that into the selection, and we will bring down the dynamic range. Finally, we have the cymbals, so we will bring that down in the second half and bring it down in the first half. Again, I want that first hit to be nice and loud. So let's take a listen to what these very quick changes in the grid editor does to the dynamic range of the entire custom groove that we've created. I really like that dynamic range, bringing that way down at the end, and then we have that nice hit at the beginning again when it loops. So some really nice quick changes in the grid editor. Now, a couple additional things we can do if we need to. I'm going to select just the Piatti again. You can see that we have a little bit of a jump here in the dynamic range, and I just want to even that out a bit. I want to make the cymbals a little bit more present. So what I'm going to do is use the velocity and dynamic dials, and we're going to smooth out the dynamics just a bit, even them out. We'll increase the velocity, and then we'll bring everything down yet again. So now we have a little bit more of an even ramp, and I could do that even a bit more if I need to. So we can make these small adjustments very quickly without going in and editing each MIDI note. Same thing at the beginning, decrease the dynamic range to even things out, increase the overall velocity, and then of course decrease the ramp at the beginning. I don't want to lose my first hit, so we'll increase that. So those are some very quick ways to use the orchestral percussion, create a custom groove by using the MIDI grooves from the orchestral percussion library, taking specific pieces or instruments from those grooves, mixing them to create a completely new and custom orchestral groove. And then we can manipulate different aspects of that groove using either the edit play style or the grid editor.